On the third day of his war against Iran, speaking in the majestic East Room of the White House, Donald Trump reminded the world of what is most important to him.
We have a lot of great service members here with us, too, in this beautiful building. Isn't it beautiful? We're adding on to the building a little bit. We're improving the building. See that nice drape? When that comes down, right now you see a very, very deep hole. But in about a year and a half from now, you're going to see a very, very beautiful building. And there's your entrance to it right there. In fact, it looks so nice, I think I'll save money on the doors, because it can't get more beautiful than that. I picked those drapes in my first term. I always like gold, but I think we can save a lot of money. I just saved curtains. But, and it'll be spectacular. It'll be the most beautiful ballroom. I believe it's because I built many a ballroom. I believe it's going to be the most beautiful ballroom anywhere in the world.
The only president in history who, in the third day of a war, is talking to the world about drapes that he chose.
It's Ken Harbaugh with the MeidasTouch Network. America is at war, and we are being led by the most incompetent, corrupt, and callous administration in our nation's history. Curtains. That's what our president was focused on during a Medal of Honor ceremony at the White House. It's one thing to be incompetent. That's actually a design feature of autocracies throughout history. They depend on incompetence. It's another thing to be corrupt. The Trump regime has taken self-dealing to dizzying new heights. Wait till I tell you about what the online betting markets were doing in the minutes before American bombs started falling. But it is the callousness that, today at least, most stands out. Donald Trump has no idea of the sacrifice he is ordering others to make. He's made it a point of pride that no one in his family was enough of a sucker to serve in uniform. That is who is leading us to war. And even as Americans are dying, the people around the president are using the distraction to advance their own cynical agendas. They are making a killing. As General Smedley Butler once tried to warn us, war is a racket. Today, I don't think anyone knows this better than Kris Goldsmith, an Army combat vet who came back from another massive American military blunder as a shell of himself, suffering from severe PTSD. Kris found his peace and went on to found Veterans Fighting Fascism and the Butler Institute, named after General Smedley Butler. He has been at the vanguard of a movement of veterans working day and night to hold the Trump regime accountable. We cover a lot in this conversation, so it's a two-parter. Here's the first one. Kris, welcome to the show. We are into the sixth day of America's war against Iran. And I say America's war intentionally because even though it is Trump's war of choice, we, as a nation, bear the burden for American bombs that are falling on Iranian cities and for American sons and daughters that are giving their lives to the whims of this tyrant in the White House. But as is the case with every foreign misadventure like this, it creates opportunities at home for fraudsters, for charlatans to take advantage of it. And in some cases, it is intentionally conceived as an opportunity for things like that here at home, whether it's election subversion or, as you've exposed, gutting the VA, which could not be more ironic as Americans are dying, taking care away from those who have borne the burden in past conflicts.
I think that I'm going to say something that's controversial, but I want people to consider it. And that is that Osama bin Laden won the global war on terror. He won. After 9/11, our country changed. It started getting involved in these foreign invasions, these fruitless wars with no end in sight. And that has changed the character of America. If it were ever true that our enemies hated us for our freedom, they've won the war. Because now we have a secret police force in this country that is kidnapping and disappearing and killing people. That is unique for our generation to experience here in the U.S. We've had dark histories, like we've had dark parts of our history: Japanese internment camps, slavery, Jim Crow. Right? Our country has done some pretty shitty things, but we are entering a new era where, while Donald Trump is leading us into a new war that is not just in Iran, Marco Rubio just told Americans in 14 countries to evacuate, not shelter in place, but evacuate, right? This is becoming a global conflict, and we are going to be dealing with this for generations, not just in terms of creating new terrorists and empowering new despots, which is what our adventurism has done so far overseas, but we're also experiencing a massive uptick in the number of troops who are injured. Now, we know of, as of this recording, about half a dozen deaths so far. That number is going to continue to climb. But if you remember during the first Trump administration, when the Iranians bombed an American base in Iraq as retaliation for the assassination of Soleimani, there were over 100 soldiers who were injured during that, many of them severely. And we didn't find out about that for weeks. It took leaks from the injured and their families to start talking about the impacts. And then Donald Trump tried to dismiss that, saying that, oh, they just have headaches. Like, traumatic brain injuries can't be a life-altering, family-destroying, career-ruining injury, because that's what a traumatic brain injury can be. And if there have been a half a dozen troops who've already been killed, there are probably many, many, many more who've been seriously injured already, and this is not getting reported yet.
And that number is surely to increase, to which the administration has responded with a literal shrug. If you look at how Donald Trump responds to the news of deaths of Americans, it is a literal meh. He's like, it happens in war, probably going to happen some more. And what is most disturbing to me about that is how, as with every other mannerism of this president, the party picks it up. Proof that it is a cult of personality. And you have, even people like Lindsey Graham, or that senator from Oklahoma. Help me out with his name. Now the dumbest
Mark
senator.
Wayne
Mullins. Right? Talking about how hard war is, how tough war is, having never smelled it or tasted it or experienced it themselves.
War is ugly. It smells bad. And if anybody's ever been there and been able to smell the war that's happened around you and taste it and feel it in your nostrils and hear it, it's something that you'll never forget. And it's ugly. And fortunately, you have Secretary Hegseth, that has got a great relationship with President Trump, and President Hegseth's been there. He's done that.
I mean, it's one thing if a lunatic president does it, but to see this virus affect the Republican Party, the party of Reagan, I get tired of saying this, but I never thought I'd see that.
Yeah. And it's not just betraying a trust as they're trying to dismantle the VA. These problems are intergenerational. When you have a generation of soldiers who come home to a VA that has been gutted, to disability benefits that have been stripped away, which is what the Trump administration is doing right now. They're going to court to remove protections for disabled veterans. And it doesn't just affect those who served. It affects their entire families.
Delete Me makes it easy, quick, and safe to remove your personal data online at a time when surveillance and data breaches are common enough to make everyone vulnerable. Look, as someone with an active online presence, this is something I take seriously. My work puts me out there, and that means my personal information can be out there too. My address, my phone number, even information about my family. And that's not just uncomfortable, it's a real security risk. Because here's the truth. Data brokers are making money off your personal information. Your data is a commodity. Anyone on the web can buy your private details, and that can lead to identity theft, phishing attempts, or worse. That's why I use Delete Me. They go out and find that personal information that's been collected and sold, and they work to remove it. It's a simple way to take back control of your privacy. Take control of your data and keep your private life private by signing up for Delete Me. Now at a special discount for our listeners. Get 20% off your Delete Me plan when you go to joindeleteme.com/Ken and use promo code Ken at checkout. The only way to get 20% off is to go to joindeleteme.com/Ken and enter code Ken at checkout. That's joindeleteme.com/Ken, code Ken. It's Ken with a quick break to tell you about my Substack page, where you'll find bonus episodes and other exclusive content. And subscribing is a way to support this show directly without us having to rely on advertisers. For those of you who have signed up, thank you so much. It is growing harder and harder to rely on traditional media. Just look at what has happened over at CBS. So independent news is going to have to make up the gap. And if you believe in what we're trying to do here in the interviews and the commentary that this show brings you, please consider pitching in. It's free to sign up, and that itself is helpful because popular shows get recommended even more people. And if you're able to afford a paid subscription, they start at $8 a month. Every dollar goes back into what we're doing. Thanks for helping out.
When I came home from the Army, I was 21 years old. I moved back into my childhood bedroom because I was a wreck. I was ruined. I was unemployable, living in my mom's house again. It wasn't just, my generation and the generation after. I became a burden for my mother. And that is what is going to continue happening when we have a VA that is unprepared for a new generation of warfighters, as it was unprepared for folks who served early in the global war on terror, as I did. Bush did nothing to expand the VA ahead of it needing that capacity to increase. And now we're seeing Donald Trump firing doctors, firing nurses, closing positions once those folks vacate, saying, oh, they're not necessary. If they were necessary, they'd be filled. Well, they're not filled because you made it a miserable place to work and you fired everybody. Like, these two things can't be true at once.
I want to talk about a small victory the veterans community racked up vis-a-vis the VA and the attempt to gut it. But maybe we end with that note, because this is another dark episode and I want to try to end on a high note. You talk about the burden of war and how the entire family carries that. There's one family that has never carried the burden of America's wars. I think I'm going to have to chat GPT this. Actually, we don't use chat GPT anymore. We use Anthropic. But I am going to posit that of all of the presidential families in America's history, the Trump family is the only one where not a single member of that extended family has had any familial ties to the military. Maybe an uncle at some point in the distant past, but no cousins, no sons, no daughters, no brothers, none currently serving in the military. The Trump family isn't bearing any of the burden for this war of choice. Neither are any of the cabinet members. Not a single son or daughter of a Trump cabinet member has skin in the game. And I think that needs to be pointed out more often.
Yeah, people don't tend to understand problems fully unless they've personally experienced them. I grew up, I was a generation separated away from warfighters. My grandfather fought in World War II, and so did all of my grand uncles, both in the European and the Asia Pacific theaters. My father never served, and I think that he protected me in a lot of ways from fully understanding what his peers and his friends went through in the Vietnam generation. My father was a little too young to be drafted, but he had a lot of friends that that were older, that went to Vietnam, that either didn't come home or came home, really rough around the edges and worse for wear. When the Iraq War first kicked off and I was still in high school, I was literally cheering. I was still under the illusion that many Americans were back then, that Saddam Hussein in Iraq were one and the same with Osama bin Laden and the Taliban and Al Qaeda. right? None of these things had any nuance to them. I thought there was just good and bad, and that war meant that the good guys were going to win. I didn't realize that we were entering a new era for what it is to be an American, or what it is to be a global citizen. The Iraq War, the most conservative estimates are that it killed 200,000 civilians. There are estimates that it's up to 1 million. The Iraq War and the destabilization of places like Libya have led to mass migration that has spurred far-right neo-Nazi and fascist parties to grow again throughout all of Europe. So the disastrous effects of what we are going to see as a result of Trump and Bibi Netanyahu's war of choice in Iran is going to be with us for generations, and not just us as Americans, but with the world. It is going to shape global politics for generations.
That was part 1 of my conversation with Kris Goldsmith. Check out part 2 tomorrow, where we get into the most blatant example of war profiteering that I have ever seen. Thanks for watching.
Love this video? Support independent media and unlock exclusive content, ad-free videos, and custom emojis by becoming a paid member of our YouTube channel today. You can also gift memberships to others. Let's keep growing together.